We can train a new grad to click the same buttons you do. He smirked across the conference table, and for a third of the cost. My badge was already deactivated. I could see the tiny red light on the wall reader blinking like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me anymore. Security waited outside the glass, pretending not to. My name is Aaron Vale. I'm 49 years old, Director of Operations Software at Aurora Air, and for 12 years I've been the guy people call at 2 a.m. when a snowstorm pins an aircraft to the wrong airport or a crew times out in a city with no hotels left. I wrote the first version of the tool that tells a gate agent in Cleveland whether Flight 742 should wait and risk a missed connection bank in Denver or push exactly 9 minutes early to save a maintenance slot in Boise. I wrote the next 9 versions too. Piper Sloan didn't flinch. She was 38, fresh from a consulting firm that sold cost-cutting as a lifestyle. Her hair was the kind that never moved when she turned her head. Nothing personal, she said, which is what people say when they're about to make something very personal. We're simplifying, standardizing. Your Zephyr platform is too custom. It makes you indispensable. That's the scary part. That's the expensive part. Darnell from HR slid a folder across the table like a coaster. Severance is 12 weeks. Accrued PTO. We'll need your equipment. I handed over the company laptop and the spare access fob I kept in my wallet because, for years, a 3 a.m. call meant driving back to the office in slippers. "Do you want me to document Zephyr?" I asked, even though we both knew the answer. I'd requested a documentation team every budget cycle for 6 years. It always got cut. "We have consultants for that," Piper said, standing. "Thank you for your service." Outside, the late March wind off Lake Michigan made my eyes water. Or maybe it was the fact that my keycard no longer opened the lobby door. In the garage, I sat in my aging Subaru and stared at my hands. They looked like my father's hands. Old carpenter hands, steady from years of doing something that mattered. I called my wife, Mariah. "It's done?" she asked. "It's done." "Come home," she said. "I'll make coffee. Then we'll talk about not talking about it for 24 hours. That night we watched a thunderstorm roll over the water, the way we used to when the kids were little and sleep was a negotiation. "They're going to call you," Mariah said. "I'm not bitter," I lied. She smiled without looking at me. "You're not vengeful either, but you are precise. You know exactly where the weak points are." I didn't build weak points. People 6. "You built seams," she said, "because real life has seams. They'll try to iron them flat. That's when the fabric tears." 2 days passed. I walked along the lake at dawn and tried to imagine who I was without a pager. I updated my resume and deleted it. I set up a LinkedIn profile and then closed the browser when it asked me to list skills like leadership and strategic thinking as if those were Lego bricks you could buy at Target. On the 3rd morning, at 4:11 a.m., my phone started buzzing on the nightstand like an angry dragonfly. Aurora Air. Unknown number, then Darnell, then Piper. I didn't answer. At 6:03 a.m., a text from Jonah, one of my SREs, lit up the lock screen. Zephyr scheduling loop went into Zulu pivot. Daylight saving patch didn't deploy. Crew misalignments across 3 hubs. It's bad, AV. I thumbed back, then stopped. Not my initials anymore, not my system. At 6:08 a.m., Piper left a voicemail. "Aaron, we're having a minor irregular ops situation. The consultants are digging into your, legacy logic. Could you spare 30 minutes to point them to the right modules?" At 6:09 a.m., I silenced my phone and made pancakes for Mariah. We ate on the porch under a blanket and listened to sirens far away on Lakeshore Drive. "You're going to help," she said. "I'm going to let them find out what undocumented means," I said, "and then I'm going to decide what being a decent person means." By noon, forums where dispatchers gossip and complain buzzed. Aurora's morning bank had melted. Crews were showing as legal in Zephyr, but illegal in the FAA rostering tool. The Zulu pivot, a kludge I wrote 7 years ago after an ice storm rolled into Boston the same night Congress decided to move daylight saving, had not been accounted for in a new containerized deployment the consultants had insisted on. It was fixable in 10 minutes if you knew 3 specific things: that a sliver of the old scheduler still ran on a forgotten box, that DST toggles must be applied before crew legality recomputes, and that the dispatch cache had to be flushed by tail number, not. At 2 p.m., Darnell called with a number. 300 an hour, he said, voice tight. 4-hour minimum, today. 500, I said, surprising myself, and I wanted in writing that this is advisory only, no liability. Done, he said instantly. Please come. Mariah raised an eyebrow as I grabbed my coat. Thought you were going to let them ride it out. I thought so too, I said, but there are crews sleeping in chairs, and there are single moms trying to get to job interviews, and there are mechanics who need a legal sign-off. It's not about Aurora. She kissed my cheek. That's why people trusted you. I fixed it in 9 minutes. I made them stand behind me, Piper and a cluster of consultants in brand new safety vests. I made them watch as I SSH'd into the legacy box that still ran a sliver of the old scheduler because the new microservice never fully cut the cord. I made them listen as I explained the Zulu pivot and why you don't swap out an aircraft mid-turn without checking tail number specific MELs, and why standby assignment is not a FIFO queue, it's a weighted graph. Who designed it like this? One of the consultants asked, like I'd told him the house was haunted. A person who was on call during the week the volcano in Iceland grounded half the North Atlantic, I said. When the screen settled and Zephyr began rebalancing the network, crew legality restored and connection banks green again. Piper exhaled like a scuba diver hitting the surface. Thank you. We'll finalize your consulting paperwork this afternoon. Can you stick around a few days? No, I said. That 9 minutes was my good deed for the month. On my way out, Jonah caught up to me in the stairwell. It's not good in there, he said softly. They don't listen. They keep talking about best practices like if they say it enough times, the planes will move themselves. You leaving? I asked. I've got a kid. I need health insurance. I get it, I said. If something opens, I'll call you. The next day, an email found me. Subject line, coffee? The sender was Leah Park, founder and CEO of Northwind Logistics, a cargo carrier I'd respected for years because they didn't pretend physics was optional. Northwind hauled insulin at midnight through winter storms and brought in generators when towns went dark. They did fewer press releases than everybody else and had fewer catastrophes. I heard through a friend you're free, Leah wrote. I've watched Zephyr from the outside and admired how your team handled IR ops. We've outgrown our patchwork. I don't want a shiny dashboard. I want a brain. Are you interested in building the brain? I showed Mariah the email on my phone. She knows exactly what to say to you, Mariah murmured. When? Tomorrow, I said. Leah met me at a diner that smelled like toast. She wore a Northwind jacket with grease on the cuff and asked the server for a mug that does not pretend to be small. She listened more than she talked. When she did talk, she described the problem better than most people I'd spent a decade explaining it to. People think a flight is a line on a map, she said, stirring sugar into her coffee. I think it's a promise with 100 dependencies. We've been keeping those promises with duct tape. I'd like to upgrade. I can build you a system, I said, but I won't build another Zephyr. She tilted her head. What's the difference? Zephyr was brilliant and fragile. It survived because we had a culture of heroics. I don't want heroics anymore. I want boring. I want a platform so documented that a new grad can fix a DST bug because someone wrote down what to do 7 years before they were hired. Leah grinned. You just described my religion. What do you need? 3 senior engineers who are allergic to hype, 6 months, the freedom to ignore buzzwords if they don't serve us, and a promise that we write the manual first. You'll have it, she said. Title? Chief Systems Architect, I said, but you can put janitor on my badge if that makes the consultants happy. Sold, she said. When can you start? We called the platform SkyMesh because I like names that tell the truth. Planes aren't trains. They exist in a mesh of weather, crew legality, maintenance, gate availability, cargo temperature, runway length, and 1,000 other things you only remember at 2 a.m. We wrote the first line of documentation before we wrote the first line of code. On day 3, I broke ground rules and called Jonah. On day 5, I hired May, an ops controller with a brain like a Swiss Army knife, and Pilar, a database engineer who could make a query sing. We do it clean, I told them in our first stand-up. No cleverness for the sake of being clever. If I see an elegant little hack with no comment above it, I will make you explain it to me on a whiteboard until one of us cries. Meanwhile, Aurora lurched from crisis to crisis. Their Twitter account, run by an intern who did not deserve the wrath of strangers, became a daily apology generator. An FAA audit found discrepancies between maintenance log entries in the hangar system and the digital maintenance clearance in Zephyr's maintenance module. That one made my stomach hurt, because I remembered why the discrepancy could happen. 3 years ago, under a deadline, we'd added a cache in front of the maintenance service to handle a surge. If you failed to purge it in a narrow set of cases, the paperwork disagreed with the truth by exactly 1 flight. On a gray Tuesday, Piper called again. "Aaron, we need a comprehensive consult, not a fire drill. We'll pay." "I'm employed," I said, "exclusively, and the paperwork we signed says advisory only. I'm not your patch on demand." She tried a different angle. "We can bring you back, full salary, VP title, a team." "What about listening?" I asked. "What about the part where I tell you an unglamorous thing that costs money now and saves your hide in 2 years, and you do it anyway because it's the right thing?" Silence on the line. Then, "We're under pressure. The board wants a sale this year. Cost matters." "It always does," I said. "So does gravity." SkyMesh grew the way good systems do, in ugly, disciplined increments. We shipped a maintenance module that didn't pretend a part was the same everywhere just because it had the same name. We shipped a crew legality engine that could tell you why a pairing was legal today and illegal next Tuesday if you swapped in a different flight attendant with a different rest history. We drew diagrams until my hand cramped, and then we put the diagrams into the docs so the next person wouldn't have to guess, 3 months in, Leah walked into our corner of the hangar with a look on her face I'd seen on ops controllers right before they moved the moon. "We got a call," she said, pulling up a chair backward. "Meridian International. They're bleeding from their partnership with Aurora. Codeshare flights aren't flowing. They want to know if we can stand up SkyMesh for their domestic feeder routes." "That's big," May said. "Can we do it?" Leah asked me. "Not all at once," I said, "but we can build a bridge. We can stand up a compatibility layer that speaks Zephyr on one side and SkyMesh on the other. We can migrate route by route, but it'll be messy." "Messy I can sell," Leah said. "Unreliable I can't." "You'll get messy and reliable," I said, "and a lot of checklists." 2 weeks later, we published our docs for the compatibility layer. We onboarded 3 Meridian routes, and nothing caught fire. On day 15, Aurora's board fired Piper. The press release said she was leaving to pursue other opportunities. People who had never flown a jump seat wrote think pieces about digital transformation. I closed my laptop and went back to writing a test for the case where February has 29 days and a mechanic does not. On the lake path, I ran into Jonah, pushing his toddler in a stroller. "We're down to skeleton crew," he said. "I'm trying to keep the lights on because I care about the people at the end of the line." "You want out?" I asked. "I want to sleep," he said. "We have health insurance," I said. He laughed, then cried, then said yes. In late summer, Aurora missed payroll. The private equity fund that owned them had planned to flip the airline to a bigger carrier, but the numbers without codeshare revenue looked like a parachute with holes. Vendors stopped extending 30 days of kindness. Hangars got quiet. A rumor crawled across the industry that an acquisition was coming. I ignored it. I had a crew legality bug to squash so a flight attendant in Tulsa could get home to her kid on the schedule she'd been promised. In October, Leah called a meeting, the kind where you can tell there's a secret in the room because everyone's talking about something else. When it was just the 2 of us in the hangar office, she said, "Northwind has been invited to bid on Aurora's ops assets. Just the software and the contracts, not the planes. The board wants liquidity. We could acquire Zephyr, the data rights, and, if we want, the team." "You want my honest opinion?" I asked. "Always." "We shouldn't buy Zephyr to use it. We should buy it to retire it with dignity. We should extract what's valuable, migrate the data cleanly, and give the people who know the weird corners a place where that knowledge gets written down." Leah nodded. "That's exactly my plan. Would you lead it?" My mouth said yes before my brain finished the reasons. On the morning of the due diligence visit, I stood in Aurora's lobby and looked at my reflection in the unkind glass. The same plants in the same corners. The same poster about safety with a picture of a smiling ramp worker in a vest 2 shades too clean. Darnell met me with a handshake that felt like both apology and relief. "Lot of folks hoping you'd walk back in one day," he said. "I am walking back in," I said, "just not to stay." We went to the server room. It felt smaller. The air was still a degree too cold from habits formed years ago when hardware was more precious than people. Jonah, now wearing a Northwind badge, opened Zephyr's admin console. I could feel the shape of the code in my teeth. We exported a week of flight and crew data to test the migration. We hit an edge case on day 1. Zephyr stored tail number restrictions for ferry flights in an auxiliary table that no one remembered to move when we split the database 5 years ago. We wrote the missing migration in an hour and documented it in 6 screenshots and a paragraph a new grad could follow. That afternoon, someone I hadn't expected walked into the conference room where we ate pizza over spreadsheets. Piper. No entourage, no blazer. "Can we talk?" she asked. I looked at Leah. Leah looked at me. 5 minutes, I said, and we stepped into the hallway. "I deserve to be fired," she said without preamble. "I made bad calls. I thought I could standardize a system into being safe. I thought if I cut enough complexity, I could cut enough cost. I'm not here to argue. I'm here because there's a team in there that followed my orders and they're scared. If Northwind acquires the ops assets, take them. Don't punish them for my slide decks." We were both quiet. A forklift beeped somewhere far away. "I don't punish," I said. "I hire. But they have to want to work in a place where we write the manual first." Her laugh was a bark. "Write it on my tombstone," she said. She stuck out her hand. I shook it. The acquisition went through on a wet November morning when the sky couldn't decide between snow and rain. Headlines said words like strategic realignment and operational synergy. What it meant in real life was that 32 ops people packed their desks into cardboard boxes that looked exactly like the ones I'd carried out months earlier, and then they brought those boxes to a different building and put them under different desks. We held a town hall in Northwind's hangar. I stood in front of a whiteboard where someone had drawn a cartoon plane that looked like it wanted to apologize. "I won't sell you a fairy tale," I told the room. "Migrations are hard. You will hate me once a week and the coffee twice a day. But we will not leave you alone with the hard parts, and we will write everything down." A hand went up in the 3rd row. "What happens to Zephyr?" "We give it a good ending," I said. "We write the history, then we turn it off." The migration hurt less than I expected and more than I wanted. There were nights when we stared at 2 screens that disagreed about a maintenance deferral, and no one could go home until they hugged. There were mornings when the coffee machine broke and we had to put a sticky note on it that said, "This machine does not meet minimum redundancy requirements." There was an afternoon when May found a bug in our translation layer that only appeared if a crew member bid a specific reserve pattern on a Tuesday in February. She wrote the test, wrote the fix, and then wrote the manual page titled, "When Tuesday is Not Like Monday." Meridian moved its last feeder route onto SkyMesh in January. The first week, an ice fog closed Spokane, and a generator failed in Anchorage, and a dog chewed through a bag of insulin in a hold that didn't stow right because a latch had been replaced with the right part number and the wrong revision. SkyMesh didn't panic. It surfaced the latch revision as a risk the moment the work order closed. It paged the right human. It proposed a reroute that respected crew rest and runway length, and the dog, who was apparently very sorry and also very healthy. On a Friday in February, Leah walked into my office and put a small cardboard box on my desk. It rattled. "Your new badge," she said. "I already have a badge," I said. "This one says Chief Systems Architect and Head of Ops Academy," she said. I stared at her. "Ops Academy? You've been building it anyway. All those docs, all those brown bag lunches where you explain why a holdover timetable isn't optional, Make it formal. Hire instructors. Record the lectures. If my company ever forgets why we do things the way we do, I want your voice in our LMS forever. I hate hearing my recorded voice, I said. Then we'll use subtitles, she said. Do it. We launched the Academy in April with a curriculum that would have made my 25-year-old self groan and my 49-year-old self put both hands on it like a life raft. Fundamentals of irregular operations. The history of 3 outages we survived and why. Writing docs that don't suck. Why DST is not your friend. A module called Seams, where we taught that systems fail, where human life is messy, and that the job is not to pretend life is not messy, but to build seams that flex. We put a plaque above the door that said, "Boring is beautiful," because we meant it. A year to the day after I handed in my badge at Aurora, I drove past the old building with a cup of coffee and a sense that my ribs were finally my ribs again. There was a for lease sign on the lawn. My phone buzzed with a text from Mariah. "You promised to bring home scones and you forgot, didn't you?" "I am absolutely bringing home scones," I texted back and pulled into the bakery lot. If this were a story for the internet, this would be the part where I say that revenge was sweet. But revenge tastes like old coffee. What I felt, standing in a kitchen where my daughter once painted a wooden airplane at the table and left blue fingerprints on the chair she outgrew, was something quieter. Not vindication, not triumph, just relief that I hadn't let bitterness turn me into a person I wouldn't hire. And a little pride that the next time a storm rolled in with a name, some dispatcher I would never meet would have a tool that told the truth and did not need me. 2 weeks later, Jonah sent me a link to a piece about the modern CTO and the myth of the 10X engineer. It quoted an anonymous source about Aurora's collapse and SkyMesh's rise. The secret was not magic code, the source said. The secret was writing down what the code was supposed to do. I read it once and then closed the tab. I had a lecture to give at the Academy about why we never accept legacy as an insult. Legacy is what we're lucky to leave. I still get calls sometimes from old colleagues when a headline blames a single person for a failure baked into the dough years before they were hired. I listen. I say the thing I wish someone had said to me earlier. You didn't fail alone, and you won't fix it alone. Then I go teach a class about DST. Last week, a storm over the Dakotas made the radar look like a child's drawing of an angry ocean. SkyMesh did what it was built to do. It nudged, it warned, it rerouted, it paged, it apologized, it documented, it learned. A ground handler sent us a picture of a cargo hold with a stack of insulin coolers strapped in like astronauts. She wrote, "We made the promise." I printed the picture and taped it to the wall under the plaque that says "Boring is beautiful, Belegen Torgen Fecht." Mariah likes to say that I have 2 speeds, asleep and sermon. The sermon today is short, and I gave it to a room full of new grads who asked me how to be indispensable without being the reason a system collapses when they leave. Don't, I said. Be dispensable and be proud. Make yourself boring to replace. That's how you become the person everyone calls when it's 2 a.m. Not because only you can save the day, but because you designed a day that didn't need saving. When I got home that night, the sky over the lake was full of the kind of clouds that make pilots sound reverent when they file pi reps. I stood on the porch with Mariah and we didn't talk for a long time. Somewhere out there, a plane turned on final, its landing lights aligned between promise and delivery. I used to think my job was to keep that line straight by force of will. Now I think my job is to make it so straight that no one notices the hands on it at all. So I do. I teach the seams. I fix the bugs. I go home for scones when I remember and forgiveness when I don't. I tell a room full of tired, smart people that boring is beautiful and mean it like a prayer. And when the phone buzzes at an ungodly hour and a voice says, "We have a problem," I ask the question I wrote into the first page of the SkyMesh manual on the very first day, before a single line of code. Where is the promise, and what will it take to keep it?